critical error.
You
Okay.
almost did the interview without
I
recording.
almost did that, which of course would have been classic Greg. But anyway, Congresswoman, so again, we're talking about the ICE mission, which I guess DHS is named Operation Catch of the Day. When you got word of this, what are you hearing from your constituents? What are you hearing on the streets right now? And what are your concerns?
Well, people are deeply worried. They're concerned for their neighbors. They're concerned for themselves. I think what's challenging is people have been watching what's going on in Minnesota. So it's not as if this is just coming out of the blue. They've seen the kind of tactics and techniques that were used in Minnesota, and they're really worried about it all happening in our state as well. We're hearing from employers. People are not coming to work because they're afraid to leave their houses. We're hearing from schools that not all students are attending. And this kind of fear just grows the more you see a video of someone being picked up and you're not sure who or why. We learned a lot of what we knew about the operation from a Fox News story, and we've been really upset with DHS that they won't give the same information to congressional offices about who they're targeting. Do they have warrants? You know exactly what they're doing in our state, but they're willing to have somebody, embedded in an ICE vehicle, traveling around our state, calling it, catch of the day. I mean, these things just seem troubling, trivializing what is a life or death situation for people. And again, having talked to my colleagues from Minnesota, visited Minnesota, I have a little bit of an idea of how these operations have been going. Picking up people who are legally in our state, people who are within the court system, maybe asylum seekers who are waiting for their court date, or refugees who have been in our state for less than 2 years. These are people with work permits who are legally here, who have been our neighbors, some of them for a long time. And what we've seen happening in Minnesota is that people are picked up quickly and moved out of state, often without the ability to have a court proceeding or to challenge any of the actions that ICE is taking. So there's a lot that people are worrying about, and we're worrying as well.
And when it comes to the 1400, again, we keep hearing the line from the administration saying that they're going after the worst of the worst. And they highlight, those who do it. I mean, certainly, there are people with criminal records. There are people that have problematic backgrounds that ICE would and should target. Is your understanding that among the 1400, that there would be some asylees, that there might be some people who do have otherwise legal refugee status in the country, or is that still undetermined?
Well, we don't know what the 1400 represents. And of course, we would agree that if there are, hardened criminals or people who have no legal right to be in our country, that is, part of a justification of ICE to pick them up, deport them, or begin some kind of removal procedures. But we've already been informed about people, individuals who have been picked up, who were within their court proceeding and have possibly already been removed from the state. So we already know that there are people who have been picked up who don't qualify for, hardened criminals. This is, people who don't have a criminal record, who are within the asylum process or in the refugee process, who have legal work permits. So we already know that they're doing that, and there would be no reason that they would be part of a targeted 1400. One of our concerns is what we saw in Minnesota is that the ICE agents were going to areas where they thought they might find somebody, a restaurant, a place of work, and just picking people up, removing them before they even had a chance to check on their status.
So, and without warrants in those cases, obviously, particular to the person who they be maybe looking to apprehend.
Exactly. And we would like to know who are their warrants for? What do they have judicial warrants? Are they legally processing people?
Is it your belief that they're targeting specifically Lewiston and Portland, or is the enforcement action beyond that? Are there other communities around Southern Maine or Bangor that, outside of this first district that would be potentially targeted, or is that unclear?
That's very unclear, but we learned from the Minnesota experience that they moved around the state after a while. I mean, we certainly know that they have been spotted in Westbrook or South Portland, the surrounding area of Portland, but we do not know anything beyond that.
What is it? I know that you've been trying to get information, as you pointed out. Is there been any thawing in that effort to try and get some sort of flow of constructive information between, as you said, members of Congress and the administration about these kinds of operations, or is it still like sort of not being shared?
No one has answered any of our questions. We're putting together a formal letter today, just to continue to push on the question, and see what we can learn.
Any other things I didn't think to ask you I did want to ask you a Greenland question if I could after this, but anything else I didn't think to ask Congresswoman about specifically on the ICE operation apparently underway right now in our state?
No, just that we'll continue to follow it closely and, are interested in any information. And also my office stands ready to help people who are trying to locate a family member. I mean, we have had a great increase in this level of activity for the past year. Now we just feel with this multiplication of ICE agents, we're just going to see it on a much greater scale.
And then if you would indulge me a question
Of course,
about
Greenland.
Greenland, we obviously saw the president today, in fact, just breaking in the last 20 minutes or so, report of some sort of framework of an agreement with the NATO Secretary General for some sort of security guarantees. I mean, we already have security guarantees. That's what NATO is. Um, your thoughts, though, about um, the threats and I guess, the apparent backing down of the president. He's removed the threat of tariffs. He's removed the threat, thank goodness, of an invasion in our ally of Greenland and slash Denmark. Your thoughts on the overall way this has been handled and maybe the update today that perhaps the president is backing down somewhat on what he's been demanding.
Well, I had the privilege of last week going with some of our Republican and Democratic colleagues to the Danish embassy and meeting with the foreign minister of both Denmark and Greenland. And we heard the harshest words I've ever heard come out of the ambassador's mouth of Denmark. And I heard many of my Republican colleagues say that they were outraged at how the president was handling this. And I think that has continued. The American public didn't like the way the way the president was talking about Denmark, which has been our ally for 225 years, about NATO, which has been the most important framework in keeping the peace in this country, and this idea that we would invade a sovereign nation because we wanted their minerals or their materials. So I think there has been huge pushback against the president, although he has persisted all the way apparently till the plane landed. At Davos, and now I'm glad to hear that he has said that he's found some new framework. I think that probably the threat from the European nations that they would impose similar tariffs on us, that they would look at some of the bond and the wealth of the United States that they hold. I mean, there's a lot of ways they could retaliate, and sometimes the president pushes his crazy ideas too far. And this may be a case where he's pulled back a little bit. The shocking thing is that we don't need to own Greenland to have national security concerns there. We had multiple bases there that we have pulled back and removed our troops from over the years. I think we're just down to one, but Greenland never told us we couldn't go back and have more. Or Denmark has willingly said, if you want more of a military presence there, come ahead. It was more that the president stated so clearly that psychologically he needed to own Greenland, which goes counter to international law and just how Americans have seen ourselves as conducting business as the United States. We don't go take over other countries because we want what they have. We certainly don't invade them. And, I've said to some of my colleagues, and I said to the foreign minister of Greenland, we're probably the state that is closest to Greenland. And through our shipping ties through Iceland, we are one of the few places that does a fair amount of shipping of goods. So, we not only have, just the diplomatic reasons we should treat our Greenland neighbors kindly, but we are also their neighbors, and we do a fair amount of commerce with them and have other international exchanges with them. So I think in Maine, we look at this and just say, let's just mind our own business and treat our neighbors kindly.
Well, thanks, Congresswoman. Oh, actually, before I let you go, this just literally popped in my head. Any updates on any ACA tax credit extensions? I know the House had a vote, and it's in the Senate's hands, and there's another deadline looming in a week
Yeah,
and
I
a
know we're
half.
waiting on the Senate. It's not been included in any of the appropriations bills. So I think that is very frustrating for people. And we're just going to hope that the Senate comes to their senses and does what we've done in the House and gives people some level of relief.
Well, Congressman, I really appreciate you, answering a couple of extra questions for me. Before we
Absolutely.
go, let me make sure that when putting Greg in charge of the technology is always fraught with peril.
I know
Let
the
me
feeling.